of the PA show, and we would love to have your questions. As Lorna said, please get in touch, because we'd absolutely love to hear from you. So the webinar is Be the Change. And I think it's really important to say that change can be scary. You know, we're all told that it's really important, and we have all got things that we want to do. We've all got goals, we've all got ambitions, we've all got various things that we'd like to be doing more of, or that we'd like to see differently in our lives. And I think it can be really potentially quite overwhelming and quite daunting to know where to start with it. And I think it's really important to say as well that these changes don't have to be life altering. Do you know what I mean? They don't have to be great big career changes or sort of huge moments. They can just be allowing a little bit more of whatever you wanted. So I think that's really sort of important to say. So we thought it might be good to start off by talking about how Lorna and I navigated some of our own changes, because what's quite interesting is we are both on second careers. So we sort of did one thing for quite a long time, and then we sort of changed to do what we do now. And so my sort of background, I was a radio presenter for just over 13 years, so a long time. I did it straight out of university, and I had a full-time national radio show on a DAB station, Heat Radio, like the magazine, interviewing celebrities and things like that. Jamie Lang was always dropping in, and I did a bit of TV as well on the back of that. So I did This Morning, and I did Big Brother's bit on the side with lovely Rylan and all that kind of stuff, and it was great. It was absolutely fantastic, and obviously friends and family, you know, it looked like the dream job, and it was amazing until it wasn't. And I really realised that I'd gone as far as I could with it, which was a really sort of difficult thing to admit, especially when everyone around you is like, oh, you've got it made, you've got the dream job. And this kind of coincided with a few changes at the station, and effectively I left. And at first I was like, this is great, this is going to be wonderful, I'm going to find my thing, I'm going to find the thing that I was meant to be doing all along, this is going to be wonderful. And I refer to this period now as the wilderness, because I spent a year really not knowing. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, where to place my energy, where to place my creativity. And yeah, like I say, it took a whole year, because I think quite often that can be the hardest thing. When you know you want change, but you don't know what it is. You know you want to change something, but you're sort of getting caught up. And I think that when we know what we do want to change, everything else is just working backwards. It's just troubleshooting between where we are now and where we want to be. So that was hard, you know, and that was a sort of difficult thing to navigate. And a few things happened, but slowly over time, I developed self-celebration. I worked with my business coach, because I certainly could not have done it alone. And that sort of got me to where I am now, to doing Celebrate Yourself, which is phenomenal, and I love it. And I'm really interested, Lorna, I'm really interested to know your story, because you were doing something completely different. So how did you get from where you were to what you're doing now?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I was a little bit different to you. I wasn't looking for a change.
Right.
So I was in a corporate senior leadership role. I was a vice president at Amex GBT, and I've been in corporate roles for 20 years, 10 of those in very senior, I would say high profile, high pressure environments. And I absolutely loved that environment. I loved the company. I loved my colleagues. I loved the flexibility. I liked the financial abundance. I liked the travel. So I wasn't looking for change, but three things happened. I saw signs of burnout. So I think first of all, it did show up emotionally, but I'm only connecting that dot looking back. So emotionally, I kind of got to a place. I wasn't depressed or anxious. I was kind of numb. You know, when you've lost the joy, I didn't laugh much, I'm quite serious. And so on the surface, I didn't even admit there was something wrong. I'm just like, just plodding along.
Yeah.
But then sometime after that, it showed physically. So I was getting like a pain and a tightness in the chest. And obviously you can't ignore the physical side for long, because that will obviously catch up with you. So first one was signs of burnout. Second one was I'd had a niggle of wanting to give something, wanting to give back. I'd like dabbled in some charity, some volunteering. I'd always wanted to write, just little niggles popping up into my mind. And then the third thing was probably being early 40s and thinking, do I still want to be doing this when I'm 50? So that was another question. But all of those things, I think, moved me to say, well, what does this actually mean? But while I was in this period of burnout, I was actually given the career of a role of a lifetime. So I was asked to lead the integration of 2 global companies, big, massive project, something I'd dreamed of. And I was excited about it. I really, really wanted to do it. But it was something that was going to stretch me so much in terms of confidence, in terms of my, I guess, in anything I do, I kind of will always put 110% in. And I thought this will probably be something I'll be successful at, but I'll die trying. It's like, at what cost? So as fate would have it, as the unit, whatever we want to call it, somebody sent me an old school friend who I hadn't seen for 20 years. And she said, hey, I see you go to some of these seminars, you're kind of into personal development. I think I've got something that might be of interest. And she introduced me to this mind mastery, kind of structured end-to-end system, billed as a bit of a leadership development course, but it's actually more of a mind mastery system to achieve whatever you want in life. And one of the first things it does is actually get you clear on your purpose. So the very long story short is I put this into place. I felt emotionally and physically better within weeks. That pain that I mentioned left me, has never been back. I was joyful. I was leading this integration, which was highly successful. You know, I had to dig deep, but it felt easy. My confidence was really high. The team enjoyed it. We got amazing results. All the while, I'm resisting, but what do you really want? And that kind of, with my expanding awareness, the program has you peel away the layers, you know, the limiting beliefs we have of ourselves. And I guess the labels we have, like the boxes I had for myself were, I'm this person, VP, senior leader. So to see a completely new box took a lot of work. But when I finally got to that point, it was just a really great thing. I wasn't looking for change. It kind of found me. And now I'm here today, speaking to you all, and delighted to be doing it.
It's brilliant. It's amazing, isn't it? So for you, and I know this is the whole basis of your work, is mindset. So what was the thing that allowed you to come at that so differently, Lorna? What were the things that you'd learned in that space?
Yeah, well, God, I mean, I think the main thing I learned was we all have limitless potential. But what we tend to do is we kind of set our objectives in life based on the boundaries that we perceive of ourselves. So we set a goal, we set an objective, we think about what we might want, or even just the smaller things in life about who we are. But we kind of think about what we want, but we narrow it and keep that goal in the boundaries of what do I think I'm capable of.
Yeah.
So and the biggest thing I learned was what we believe we're capable of is just a set of ideas that we didn't even choose, most of them. You know, they were put there in our childhood. We kind of then accepted them. We then maybe add our own, you know, that little voice in your head that tells you who you are and who you're not.
Yeah.
When I learned that actually it's just a set of ideas, a set of beliefs, that when you get the tools to change those beliefs and ideas and upgrade them to get something close to actually the person you want to become. And we go at it from a place of imagination. We don't kind of look all around us and say, based on who I am today, based on my skills, based on my experience, what can I have? You ignore your experience, skills, and past, and you go into your imagination and you say, well, what would I ideally want? So 2 things, just kind of really trying to simplify and kind of cut to the chase. I got really clear eventually on actually this is what I want. So the first thing I teach people is the desire has to be there, because the desire for something that we really, really want is what moves us to grow and put in the work for ourselves so that we can become the person we want to become and achieve that desire. And obviously I've kind of got the tools now following this end-to-end system, which is kind of a mind mastery, kind of layer by layer. You kind of realize that, you know, there's no difference between me and Barack Obama, but there's no difference between me and Oprah Winfrey. We're all equal. The only difference is the way we perceive ourselves.
Do you think that self-worth plays into this, Lorna? Because I sometimes, I mean, I've been guilty of this myself, but sort of a lot of the people that I talk to, quite often we don't think that we're worth this sort of the ultimate desire, I suppose, of what we really, really deserve. Like, I always sort of say, because my work's so much about self-celebration, and the first thing I usually get asked is, it sounds like it might be bragging, and I don't want to come across as arrogant, and I don't, you know what I mean? I don't want to be too big for my boots, or, you know, well, I'd be so embarrassed if anyone knew what I really wanted, or that anybody, you know, thought that I could actually be the same as Oprah Winfrey. So I think that there's something around that, isn't there? And actually believing that we are worth doing it for. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I totally agree. I mean, because I think one of the big light bulbs for me, one of the most important things I learned was this idea of self-image. So we have an identity that we have about ourselves, and it's all the details from the way we look on the outside, the way we meet people, the way we love, the way we laugh, and what do we say to other people. And oftentimes people that can, you know, you say to people, tell me 3 things you're good at. People will be dumbfounded, right? Tell me 3 things you're really bad at. They can go, this, and this.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a cultural thing.
Yeah.
We think it's better and it's humble to kind of say, you know, let me tell you how bad this is. I'm really bad at presentations, or, you know, fitness just isn't me, you know, and these are all these labels that we have for ourselves. And I think the core foundation of what you talk about in terms of your self-celebration and what I talk about are very, very similar, or if not the same, because it starts with, you have to kind of start by loving yourself. You have to kind of start by saying, I love who I am today, because anything you want, when I talk about creating the person who has what you want, that's not somebody with a negative set of ideas about themselves. It's somebody with high self-esteem. You would start at that place. You would start by loving yourself, because this isn't about, I'll be happy when, is it? You talk about that.
Gosh, I talk about it all the time. It's such a big topic because I think it tricks us all the time. I call it the waiting room. So when I sort of discuss it, and we can be in a waiting room over anything at any point. So for me, for example, it was always my weight. For years and years and years, it was always, oh, when I lose weight. When I lose weight, then I'll wear clothes I like. When I lose weight, then I'll love my body. When I lose weight, then I'll eat really well. Everything existed on the other side. And I mean, I waited 20 years. Do you know what I mean? I can remember thinking that as a teenager, and I'm nearly 36 now. You know, I mean, it went on for a long time. And it's amazing how much you can slam the brakes on in every area of your life. You know, I remember when I did get that call from this morning and said, oh, would you come on? Part of me wanted to say, well, could I come on in 6 months when I've lost my weight? I really did. I really put it on, you know, obviously I didn't do that, and I sort of pushed through that fear, but I could easily, you know, there was so many other things that I would put off because I hadn't lost weight. So, and we can, you know, weight's only one example of a million examples. You know, it can be when I lose house, when I move house, you know, when I meet someone, when I get in a relationship, you know, when I get a promotion at work, all of these different things, when I've been on holiday, you know, all of these different spaces that we can really wait, we can really, really sort of hold ourselves. And I think, you know, picking up from what you said, Lorna, we all imagine our shiny, glittery future self who has all of the things that we want, and they love themselves. You know, that's what when I think of my shiny future self, oh, she loves herself, she's really confident, she's got all her self-esteem in place. And it's funny because right now she doesn't exist. She's only in my head, you know, she's only kind of what I'm dreaming of and waiting for. The reality is right here. You know, she's living my best life, but I'm just going to have to wait actually until I'm as good as her. So I think self-love can be scary and overwhelming. And I think there's a lot of Pinterest quotes, aren't there, that just say, well, you just got to love yourself. Just got to love yourself. And it's really hard to know what that is and what that looks like. And I always say that self-love is any act of kindness towards yourself. And that could be anything at all. That could be making sure you eat lunch before 3 o'clock. That could be filling up your water bottle. That could be, you know, managing to catch the earlier train home. Any tiny, you know, it could be getting your clothes out the night before, taking your makeup off when you first get in. All of these kind of moments, it's really easy to just let them go and not notice we're doing them. But to me, they are perfect examples of self-love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. I mean, interestingly, what you talked about your future self is somebody who is shiny and new. There's some synergies there as well, because one of the most powerful things I learned was how marvelous and magic our imagination is. As human beings, that's the only thing that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom, our ability to think, our ability to imagine. And I spent my time in the corporate world in transformation programs. I planned for life, right? So if I couldn't see the logical path towards the outcome, I didn't want to know. I have a husband who is all sorts of crazy business ideas, and he'd love to sit for hours and talk and imagine. And I used to say, you're wasting my time. If I can't see a path towards it, you're absolutely wasting my time. Wow. I couldn't have been more wrong. What I've learned is I couldn't have been more wrong. Think about this. Everything that was ever created was created twice. First in someone's imagination, and then secondly in the real world. Anything had to start in someone's imagination. So the future you has to start in your imagination. It has to. The trick is, how do we create the powerful vision of who you want to be, create that with such a lot of detail and intensity. And in my case, what I had to do was create a vision of the things that I had to believe in to go after this transformation, because the old me was somebody who didn't really like the limelight. You know, I have a sister who's quite gregarious, and I was always the shy one. Didn't really like putting myself out there to be judged in the public eye. So you can see how me wanting this dream of personal development and really wanting to share this information with anybody I can share it with smacked up against the ideas I was having about who I actually was, and the ideas I'd clung on to for 40 years. So the first thing I had to do was say, well, what are the beliefs of the me doing what I want to be doing? That person believes she can talk to people, she can talk on a stage. That person believes she is confident. That person believes she's actually worthy of talking about these things. And you can't just kind of decide that on an intellectual level. Obviously, one of the things I teach is how to implant that. So it's like what you said, Sarah, you're implanting the idea of the new you, and you have to start with the idea of the new you if you're to stand a chance of becoming her. But then the trick to your day-to-day joy is, I guess it's two things happen. One, you get so in tune with through the vivid imagination of what you want and who you're going to become that you feel great anyway, because you're kind of living in that place, right? And secondly, because you're living in that place in your imagination, you are moving towards it. Yeah. A lovely quote, you create her or him and you become them.
Yeah, lovely. And it is, I just want to sort of mention this quickly, because there may well be people watching this who exist kind of like I did when I talk about the wilderness, you know, because I really didn't know what it was that I wanted. And something that happened for me in that place was I read a book by Jen Sincero called You Are a Badass, right? And I hate that title. Have you read it, Lorna?
It's on my shelf. I haven't read it.
Well, it was on my shelf for a year, and a friend came round and she picked up, when I was sort of having this whole moment, I was really in it. She picked the book up and she went, oh my gosh, this book. And I said, I haven't read it. And she said, read this book, it'll change your life. And the reason that I mention it, aside from the fact that it is profoundly helpful and it's very, very easy as a self-help book to read. So it's Jen Sincero, and maybe we'll sort of send some notes out afterwards and we'll add that in. But what she does is she really encourages you to get very clear on what it is that you want, and actually take responsibility then, that it's almost like your duty to do what you want. And this can be something very, very small, like I love gardening. I absolutely love it. And that's what I'm going to build more of into my life. And that's what I'm going to get clear on. For me, it was, I wanted to be in a room full of people, having a good time on stage, and they were engaged and they were laughing and they were happy. And that's all I knew. That really was all I had. So it doesn't have to be a big finished article, I suppose is what I mean. Like, you don't have to have the solid business plan. You know, this isn't The Apprentice. Like, you don't have to have it, all of the answers really ready to go. And I think that that's something else that can put us in that waiting room space, that we wait until it's perfect. Don't we wait until we've got the shiny website and the brand new laptop and all the money and everything's sort of ready, and then we're going to press click on launch our business or whatever it is. You know, if you want to start running, I think that there's this tendency, oh no, I've got to get new trainers, I've got to get new running kit, I've got to wait for the weather to be better, I've got to wait for absolutely everything to be perfect. And I think that's a real trap that we can get into as well, actually, when we don't know what we want. You know, I think we can wait for it to be perfect before we do anything.
So how did you get the whatever it was to help you just take a step forward into that?
So I was really fed up with waiting. I think that's the first thing. I was really done. I was really bored. And what I started to do was really identify the stories that I was telling myself around that. So why couldn't I? Do you know what I mean? Why couldn't I start a business? Why couldn't I have an idea and launch it? And, you know, I had all of those fears. I'm not good enough, imposter syndrome, which, you know, just to sort of touch on this quickly, I feel like we all suffer from a bit of imposter syndrome at some point. I think we all feel a bit insecure, or we think we shouldn't be there, or we think we're not good enough, or we think there'll be somebody else doing it better. So I really sort of started to unpick these stories, and I really started to champion myself a little bit, because I was just so done. I was so bored of being mean to myself, telling me I couldn't, telling me it was sort of, I was awful or not good enough, or all of those awful things that we all say to ourselves. You know, we all have that inner critic, that mean voice that sort of speaks to us so badly, and in a way that I would never speak to anybody else. So I really started to sort of take charge of that. And as I say, one of the things that I did was I got a business coach.
Yeah.
And she really helped me. You know, I always say I wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for her. It would still be me going, I just want to be on a stage talking. You know, it would still be sort of me saying that. So that structured it. And every time those sort of difficult moments came up for me where I was like, I just can't do this, she would really help to reframe that. So that was what I needed personally. I needed somebody or a structure in place to really help sort of get me through it. But yeah, it kind of was as simple and as complicated as deciding I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm just going to do it anyway. And what's the worst that can happen? Because I'm fed up with waiting. I can't wait any longer. It's now, you know. And I do think, you know, I got into my 30s and I was like, is this it? You know, is this it? Have I just got to keep waiting for it to begin? You know, was there a moment like that for you, Lorna, when you were like, right, this is it now. This is the moment that I'm going to go for it?
Yeah, God, I actually know exactly what I did, where it was, and what happened. So with the program that I now teach, that I was studying at the time, you deliberately study it twice, and the reason the reason why you go through 12 modules first, then you repeat, and the reason for that is it takes you that time to get out your own way. So what I was doing for the first 12 weeks was resisting and talking about how everything was great and how I loved my life and how I didn't want anything else. And I believed that. I absolutely believed that. But what happens, you see, is I call them like an idea seed. So we have an idea seed. And if we're lucky, we let it come to the surface and we like look at it and maybe entertain it. Most of us don't get the idea to the surface and we kind of just bury it straight away.
Yeah, because it's scary.
Because it's scary, because we can't see the how. We can't see the path. So what most of us will do is say, I'd really like this, but you know what? I'll do it as soon as I've paid the mortgage off, or I'll do it as soon as I lose the weight, or I'll do it as soon as the kids go to university. And that soon as just becomes a never-ending story. The soon as is always, like you say, waiting for that thing to happen.
Yeah. The irony is there, it's never soon, is it? We're saying as soon as, the soon is the last thing that it is.
Exactly. So it starts with a decision. And when I decide, the two key decisions I made. The first one was, oh my goodness, I've loved this industry since I was 20, in my early 20s. I discovered Tony Robbins, and I went through his end-to-end Get the Edge program. We bought it off QVC. And I would say I put that down to my successful corporate career, because it helped me in that moment. So I had an itch around that industry, but I kind of buried it for 20 years. I'm like, if you know Tony Robbins, anyone on this webinar, he's like a guru. He's like this amazing, funny. I'm like, I could never do that. So that was an idea seed 20 years ago that I had that I went, no way, that's not me. And that was it, buried. Continued studying, love the information. And then eventually through, the cycle that I went through of studying myself, really from the point of view of what are my limiting beliefs, I put it all to work in my health, in my emotions. I started to write, which I'd always wanted to do. And I led the amazing integration. So it was in place all along, and I was kind of day to day more joyful. And if I'd never come across actually this decision to do what I'm now doing, I would still be living an amazing life, because I found the minds. It wasn't the transformation into this role that's made me so joyful. It's the tools to actually choose to go at things differently, to see myself differently. Nonetheless, I got to a point where I said, I'm now clear. I'm going to follow this through, because I now believe, I now know I don't need to know all the answers ahead of time like a project manager. I can kind of just take steps towards it. So decision number one was, okay, I'm going to go and study and train to be able to be a leader and a facilitator in personal development. At that time, I still didn't dare admit to myself that I was going to leave the corporate role. I said, I'll use it to be a better leader. And worst case scenario, I've just invested a load of time and money in my own development. That was my theory. That was my safe way of doing it. And then the day I made the decision to actually leave everything behind and jump was, one of the things I do for my continuous development is I go to Canada for training for a whole week, 2 or 3 times a year. And it was day 2 of the training, and I just was around all these great people with great minds. And I went, I'm going to do this. This is what I can do. And I wrote affirmations all over the hotel, the little notes you get in the hotel.
Yeah.
I wrote it on every sheet, and I threw it all over the hotel room.
Brilliant. Oh my gosh, I love that. And it sounds, for some people, it might sound a bit woo-woo to do something like that, but it works. Oh my gosh, it works. Saying these things out loud, having these real moments of clarity and declarations, writing them down, throwing them around the room, it really, really works, because something changes in you. Something goes from being, oh, I wonder, oh, maybe, oh, as soon as, it goes from that clarity. And it's really interesting. I love what you said. We get it the wrong way around, don't we? We think we'll wait for the big stuff to change, and then we'll be joyful and we'll be able to celebrate ourselves. Yeah. And it works the other way round. We start here and then the big stuff changes. And I also think I heard this great expression, which is so often we think it's a one big light bulb moment, and more often than not, it's fairy lights. Some things, like you had that idea seed, like you said, 20 years ago. So that's a fairy light. And sometimes we look back and there's a whole, they're all lit up, a whole string of them. And it's so often that's how it happens, rather than that moment where you wake up and you say, today's the day, I'm going to hand the notice in, I'm going traveling. We all think that's how it's got to be. And it's so often not that with change. It's so often those little fairy lights. So sort of having that change, Lorna, and going from doing what you did before, what's sort of been the hardest bits? And I suppose also, what are you kind of most proud of?
Yeah. Well, I think I wouldn't call this hard at all, because I kind of set the deliberate intention that none of this would be hard. And that's a tool as well, right? So the way I've designed this life isn't for it to be a hustle and hard. It's to be me, and I'm free because I'm being me and I'm being authentic. But I would say one thing I do have to remind myself is, if you get a bit maxed out, we're all really, really busy. There's just no question. That never goes away. Doesn't matter what industry, where you go, the busyness is still there. So, yeah. And my nature from 20 years in a corporate role is big demanding roles. I'm super efficient. My nature is to knuckle down, get it done, and I'm super productive. And I have to remember that that's not always the best answer. And I would say to you all on the webinar today, working harder, trying to squeeze as much out of every hour of every day is probably the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
In terms of giving yourself that space, give your mind that freedom. But what I have to do when I may be veering into that is remind myself why I got into this. I got into this because I'm so passionate about what I've got, the information I've got to share, the impact it has on the people I'm working with. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that for it to then become about running a business or the admin or the tasks. because then the joy will leave this in this business as well, right? So that's it. It's not a challenge as such, but it's something I need to remind myself to do. Remember why I do what I do and why I chose it and why I love it. What about you?
I think, I mean, I really resonate with what you said about sort of knowing when to stop. Do you know what I mean? Knowing when enough's enough. And I think especially when you work for yourself, or just anybody who sets their own agenda for the day, you know, if you've got your to-do list and it's your task list, I think it's really, really easy to go, oh my gosh, if I don't get through all of these tasks and if I don't tick off all of this to-do list as fast as I possibly can, then I'm failing and I'm falling behind and it's not going well and it's not going right. And I think finding your boundaries is obviously really important. And I always say, you know, the hardest thing sometimes is to know what you need. It's all very easy in hindsight to go, oh, of course I had a big cry that night because look at what had happened those sort of 2 or 3 weeks before, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's really, really in hindsight to go, oh, that's why, you know, I was so tired because I'd done all that. So I think, you know, I'll find myself, you know, in bed, going to bed at night or getting up in the morning, scrolling through Instagram, being on my emails, just being awake. And I have to be very clear about, although I would happily fall into that, my boundary is that that's not going to serve me. So I actually, you know, I'm trying to not, I'm saying this as, you know, we're all a work in progress, aren't we? Nobody's perfect.
Absolutely.
I'm, you know, I'm trying to leave my phone in the other room and things like that. But I think that it's really easy when you have got that to-do list and it's never ending. You know, let's be really clear. We never get to the end of that to-do list ever because there's always something else to do. But I think it's really easy to get very focused on what we haven't done and the things that we haven't achieved. And what I really, really encourage everyone to do with self-celebration is to just shift the focus slightly. Yeah, you've got all that to do. I really hear you. That's the truth. That's the reality. At the same time, what have we done? You know, what have all those moments that I mentioned earlier that can go past because they're not big, loud, crashing celebrations. They're not big achievements. They could be really, really significant to you. If you've got a really busy day and you left your desk and managed to go outside for 10 minutes, that could be a really huge achievement. That could actually be worth honouring and celebrating. And when I say celebrating, I don't mean popping Prosecco, you know, or having a splurge in Oliver bonus. I just mean having that moment with ourselves and going, oh, I'm really pleased that that went well. Or, God, I'm really, really happy that I was able to do that. Because I believe when we give ourselves that moment to go, I'm all right, you know, it's messy, but I'm doing it. It doesn't look how I want it to. It's not perfect, but I'm here, I'm showing up and I'm doing it. When we allow ourselves to have that moment that can just be seconds, we can drop into that anytime, anywhere. It releases all that inner kindness and it releases all that compassion. And that to me is self-love. That's how we build up that habit. And I always needed something that I could do as I was going along. You know, so if I was on the sofa watching Love Island, or if I was at work, or if I was, you know, sending an email, I needed something that I could really drop into, that support system. Because if I had to have a notebook, or if I had to, you know, do a 10-minute meditation, or all those things that are so effective, that wasn't going to quite work for me every time. Yeah. So that's why I created self-celebration, to have something, to have that support tool that is with you all the time. And it is just as simple as going, I'm doing it, you know, I'm here and I'm doing it.
I love that. I love that because it's in harmony with some of those ideas that I talk about, because we can read the books, we can go, I've been on seminars, I've Tony Robbins, I went to his London event, all amazing things, but they're kind of one-off events, you know, the books are one-off experiences. And in that moment, we kind of feel lifted, we feel great, but we put a few things in place for maybe a couple of weeks, it doesn't stick. And I think you're talking about something that helps these things stick and become part of people's lives. And that's what stuck for me, because it was a systematic structure that helped it stick.
Yeah.
I know we're coming to the end of the time, so maybe I had one thing I wanted to maybe encourage the guys on this audience to think about. And Sarah, you can maybe share maybe your top, if there's one or two, whatever.
Oh, absolutely.
But when I think about you guys, you know, I no longer have an EA right now, and I had the most fabulous EA. We had a fantastic relationship. But I think about you guys, because I know intimately your role, PAs and EAs, and it is a role where you're constantly thinking about somebody else. That's the definition of your role, isn't it? To support somebody else, to think about their needs, and if they go on a business trip, you're kind of there with them, even though you don't get the joys of the trip, if we can call it that. So I think you guys, more than anyone, I think try and give yourself a bit of space. And it doesn't have to be space to kind of come up with this, like Sarah said, this big almighty purpose. It's the space to say, where do I want to live emotionally, even if that's all you did, because if you really ask yourself, where do you spend most of your time emotionally? Where's home for you emotionally? We'll all know people who spend time more often than not in fear, worry, stress, anxiety, doubt, right? And we'll know people who spend time in joy, abundance, happiness, and just try and gauge where you are, and try and set a different intention. Just try and set a deliberate path for yourself, because one of the most powerful things I learned is the ability to set an intention. And you do that using these tools we've talked about, your imagination. So if you want to set an intention for your day, dream of a day that's going to go well. Set an intention for you showing up feeling great, feeling confident, feeling abundant. You're far more likely, when you plan your day and set that intention in advance, to kind of, when something smacks you in the face and somebody pushes in front of you on the tube, you're far more likely to kind of let that go and not kind of get dragged into the outside world that is always going to be there. All you can control is what's inside, and you can do that by some advanced intention setting, advanced decision making, a bit like going to the gym, right? If you're going to go to the gym the next day, the person who's set a clear intention, books the class, has their trainers next to their bed, and is set their alarm and is up and out. The person who said, maybe I'll go to the gym, and sets their alarm, doesn't quite have a plan, when they wake up and they're under the duvet and it's cold, are they going to get up or not, right? So intention setting would be my final thought, Sarah.
Absolutely. God, that's perfect, isn't it? And just picking up on what you said, if you are in that sort of job, like you said, which so many of the people watching will be, where you are responsible for somebody else, and actually that might not be the only person in your life that you're responsible for. We've got all of these people, and I think that it's really important to say, you can't pour from an empty cup. Like, if you're not taking care of yourself, actually, what are you taking from that other person? And so I think learning what works for you, which I know sounds very, very broad, but whatever that looks like. So learning that actually you're somebody who can't do anything until you've had a cup of tea, so you get a really nice mug on the go at work. Or, you're somebody who knows you have to eat lunch at 1 o'clock, so you make provisions for that, whatever it is, just knowing what really, really works. And obviously, of course, I'm going to say, please celebrate yourself. Please, a little bit, even if it feels weird, even if your inner critic wants to kick off and say, you can't celebrate that. If it's important to you, that's where it starts and ends for me. That's the most important thing. If you want it, and it is absolutely fine to want whatever you want. You don't have to justify yourself to anyone, whether that is, like Lorna said, something emotionally, just about how you want to exist, or it is something that's a bit more of a visible change. If you want it and it's important to you, you deserve it and you are worth it. And that's, it is as simple and as complicated as that.
Oh, wow. I feel like I'm on this morning couch with yourself. We feel a celebrity.
Oh gosh, no, not at all. Guys, it's been so lovely to be with you here today. It's just been absolutely wonderful. We really hope to see as many of you as possible. The details there for the PA show are on the screen. It's just been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. So just wrapping us up, thank you so much from my side as well. And I hope we've served you well. That was our intention, to give you a good 45 minutes in your day. What we're asking for is, we're here live with you all. Please be there if you can be at the live PA show. And instead of us kind of deciding what to speak about, we've got a lot of stuff we can talk about, as you've heard today. We'd love to hear what you'd like us to speak about. If today's sparked some questions or resonated, or you'd like to dig deeper into anything, then if you could submit those ideas and suggestions into Messy. I think possibly by about middle of next week, which will just give us a few days to gather the thoughts and ideas and the structure for you at the show. But thank you again. We'll wrap it up. We've got this recorded, so we will be able to share it, and you'll be able to listen back and share with people who may have missed it. Thank you, everybody. Have a fabulous day. Take care.